Wolsey went to the Pope, said, please can he divorce Aragon? He was told no, hence was like, well, we're no longer Catholic. Whilst, I hasten to add, remaining a Catholic in private till the day he died and thinking the Protestants were heretics. Just a little fact to throw in with that. At some point, they started to run out of money, and he was like, Thomas, listen, mate, is there anywhere we can get any more cash? And Cromwell had an idea, what about
Ready to fill that
burn
void in your soul for a moment?
steal their
Shop for the hottest
and
new
that is
fashions at
exactly
the
what they
casino
did.
store.
No longer Catholics, don't need stuff, let's burn everyone. And that's what they did for 5 years. From 1535, under Cromwell, the dissolution of the monarchy took place. The properties, land, and assets of the monarchy and other materials belonging to the church were passed to the crown and then into the aristocracy and nobility. There were uprisings, of course, Sean Bean famously, and they were persecuted and executed, hundreds of martyrs, thousands dead over the succeeding years, both Protestant and Catholic.
Who took my drink?
I mean, it really...
Welcome.
I don't think it's dramatic to trace that to Northern Ireland and all the other problems, the divisions we still see in our society today, all because he fancied Anne, who lived across the road.
What a name too. Boring. Anne.
I know.
No one's changing religions for an Anne. Like if her name was Micah, you'd go, yeah. All right.
Girl off OnlyFans. No, Anne, lives across the road.
One syllable, starts with an A.
Thinking about Anne.
4 letters. I mean, only 3. It's just Anne. Come on.
I mean, given that the whole of Europe had this Protestant rising anyway, it was coming, would it have come to England were it not for Horny Henry? Who knows? But to single-handedly change the religion of a country and just about hold the country together and to make the country flush with cash, take away the immorality of how it was done.
I just think the only big issue I had with what you just said is if Henry VIII was going to bring any fast food franchise to the UK, it wouldn't be McDonald's, it would be Burger King.
Of course.
Of course it would.
Hungry Jack's, the Felicity, of course.
Thank you. Do you know what I've always wanted to do, just on the Burger King? This is serious. I've always wanted to get like a Disney-sized princess dress and walk into a Burger King and just go, and I am the Burger Queen! And then walk out.
If anyone's going to do that on this call, it's me. And do you know the story of why there is no Burger King in Australia, Felicity? I'm assuming everyone knows that.
No.
Do you know why it's called Hungry Jack's in Australia?
No.
This is one of, and it's very Henry VIII-esque, this story.
Well,
so Burger King launched
got burgers involved.
in the 70s and 80s. That's not spelled with an H, I have to say burgers.
All right.
So Henry VIII Burger King launched in... and it went everywhere in the world, and then it came to Australia, and there was one guy, I can't remember, I think he's in Sydney, or it might be, but for comedy purposes, he's in Queensland. And he had a one-off restaurant called Burger King.
Oh, yes,
and
please.
Everywhere else in the world, everyone's gone, here's some cash, you're not Burger King. And this guy went, they offered him hundreds of thousands of pounds. He was like, I'm the fucking Burger King, and no one will ever take my title. And he's still there today, this one Burger King. So that's why it became Hungry Jack's in Australia.
Oh,
Don't you just
my
love
God.
that story? The
I love
reformation of burgers in Australia. What do we think of this? You're being very, very shy here about talking about this policy, the dissolution of the monasteries, Alex. Is this just barbaric evil, or is this incredibly clever, brutal kingship that needed to be done?
Well, I mean, it's actually, I was about to go in hard on one way, but it's both the things you just said, right? So, you know, the monasteries, like, helped out a lot of the poor and needy, and so the, like, dissolution of the monasteries just helped Henry VIII give a bunch of money and land to a loyal class of nobles, and then, you know, keeps him a stronger king, but it just completely screws the poor people, basically. So
even further.
They're
already poor.
Yeah, but you don't want to be poor. This is 16th century poor. That's not. This isn't like now poor. This is like.
There's no Wi-Fi there. It's not Wi-Fi poor, you know?
There are places that had no Wi-Fi in Tudor England.
Yeah, there's no pay-as-you-go monthly plans there.
But what about the idea that the Catholic institution in England at that point was corrupt? There is evidence that it was corrupt. It wasn't really for the poor. There was a sort of front show where poor people were being helped out. You know, a few peasants hung out the front. Look, we polished Mrs. Miggins' teeth. And then at the back, all the gold pieces are being stolen. And they were being stolen by someone not even resident on the island. was it really an institution that was appropriate for an emerging world power, do you think? I'm going to ask Grania this one. See what she says. Grania,
What I will say, as somebody who's brought up Catholic, I don't think you guys understand how long and boring Mass is. It goes on so long. It's so boring. It goes on so long. Then you have all the different festivals around Easter. You have 2 holy days. You're supposed to go to Mass then. And I think part of the reason why Britain had the Industrial Revolution is you guys had that much more time that you weren't just like stuck in some tedious, like, religious pageants. So I think, yes, I think good for the Henry VIII. Dissolve those monasteries. All those monks, they're only brewing alcohol anyway. They're all drunk probably. So
The drunk
get
monks.
them out. Yeah, get them out. Good for Henry. Burn a few more.
I'm going to shock you then, Grania. I'm going to shock you. I grew up, I had no religion, and then my sister wanted to go, my mum wanted my sister to go to a Catholic high school, so she had to become Catholic just to get her in because it was a good school. And I said, Mother, I would also like to become Catholic. And she said, Felicity, you're not going to that school. You don't need to. And I said, I know. I've had a look at the brochure, and I'd like to become a Catholic. So
You turned Catholic?
I turned Catholic. I was
You were a Catholic
confirmed
convert?
by choice.
No way.
Yeah.
And are
That is
you
no longer
still
the
a practicing?
case.
No.
I did find out at one point that maybe my values weren't aligned with the Catholic Church.
You like the wine bit?
I love, yeah. Turns out I also like my uterus and control over that. I know, very selfish, not very spiritual, but that's how it goes.
Envelope number 3, please. It's trickier than I bloody thought it would be, you know.
What to make him a genius?
Yeah.
So, Henry, King of the Arts. Henry was intellectual who read St. Thomas Aquinas for pleasure, an expert linguist, am I right, girls? A humanist.
Cunning linguist.
A humanist, an astronomer, a world-class sportsman, a competent musician and composer, an accomplished horseman, and a knowledgeable theologian. And that's from Alison Weir, historian, author of Henry VIII, the King and His Court.
Anyone who, I know we ask around a lot on the show, but anyone who is seriously interested in Henry VIII, that is the book to read. It's not so much revisionist as it sort of takes a step back from the simplistic stereotypes we had of him. The man was actually, he wasn't just a brute. He honestly believed philosophically, politically, and religiously in the things he did. What he did was abhorrent, but they were grounded in actual spiritual teachings, philosophy he'd read, and also he was strangely prudish and shy man. It's the other thing I've learned about him. So,
In what way?
he didn't like talking about. He's got a reputation for being like a bawdy. Bring me the wench while I tear the turkey off this bird. Lift up, of course. Indeed, wonderful breast. Take it to my chamber. There was none of that. He was very, very sexually prudish. When the revelry went too far in the court and the games were getting a bit rowdy, he would disappear as the first one to go, where that's not really his thing. The opposite to all the telly adaptations we see, basically. So,
Can I-
more nuanced picture to be drawn. Yeah.
Sorry, can I just tell this? So I'm such a nerd. I'm really exposed to my nerd side. Can I tell you one story I read about Henry VIII?
Yes.
Oh my god, right. So apparently the real reason why his marriage to Anna Cleves was a disaster was, so apparently she was arriving at this court and he had this idea in his head. He would dress up as this servant. And because he was so crazy and so like a fantasist really, he thought he'd dress up as a servant and that she would fall in love with him and recognise, hang on a sec, who's this lowly servant? And then he'd be like, ta-da! I'm your husband-to-be, King of England. So that was his plan. So he, tells everybody, he's all excited. She arrives at the court, he's dressed as a servant, and she blanks him. She's just like, oh, thanks, here's my coat or whatever. And then he was like, ta-da! And he was so embarrassed and he was so upset. He was basically like, okay, the marriage is off. And that broke my heart because I'm like, that is something I would do. That is 100%. Something I would think was a really good idea, and then it would, work out really badly. So I just think
So cute.
he was just mad. He had all these unachievable dreams and expectations. He wanted to be the perfect king, and he couldn't be just happy with Catherine of Aragon. Yeah, they didn't have any sons, but they had a daughter. He was just like, I have to be the perfect medieval king.
You know what you sound like you're describing an incel. So you just sound a sexed up incel.
Alex, what do you think? Do you think any courtship that ends with the word "ta-da" is doomed, isn't it? I mean, firstly, just to back up. I read that story too, and apparently he stank so bad because everyone stunk, but he stunk particularly bad with his pulsating leg injury that it really added to the whole vibe of this. And he didn't just go, I'm a lowly servant. Apparently he burst in a bit threatening, like some sort of attack was going to happen. And he was like one of the servants to the mate. It was like a Robin Hood type scene. That's what he did. I'm going to rape you. Not really. I'm going to marry you.
It's just like, it's really Secret Millionaire vibes, and it's also
That's it.
the sentence, it's like 16th century Secret Millionaire, and then also it's like the sentence in your head, like, oh, I just want this significantly younger princess to love me for who I, jousting injury, block, am. It's just like, come on, but sometimes roll with the kingship thing. Know what your strengths are.
I know, but I just don't want people to like me because I'm a king. I want people to like me for me. I mean, this is crown.
I'm a terrible person. I just want people to love me for me.
What do you think about these other confusing factors? For example, Lord Mountjoy, his boyhood tutor wrote, he's a lover of justice and goodness. What affection he bears to the learned. And this carries on throughout his life. He seems to be genuinely intellectually gifted. There's plenty of brutish kings in history that were just like shag, sack a city, die. This was mixed with there was a game, as vile as you might find the game plan in 2021, there was a game plan in his head. He was the first English king to write a book, a 30,000 word essay. He was the first, he was presiding when the first book was published by a woman in English. His wife, Catherine Parr, the first proto-feminist king, chopping heads off with one hand, publishing with another. Does this not confuse the shit out of you, Alex?
Well, okay, so two things. One, we've been talking about what comedians are doing in the pandemic. I've obviously gone back to being a maths tutor, and I can tell you that what a tutor says about a student shouldn't always be. You're not smashing it as a tutor to tell the King of England, Henry VII. Yeah, your son's not great actually. You're pretty sick, son. That's not. I can tell you that that was one extra execution I've ever done.
He's torturing animals and laughing, like to watch rats drown. Is that normal?
Yeah, I've never written that on a report. And I would say too, it's like the whole. I mean, one of my favourite things about the whole Renaissance man Henry VIII thing is that one of the things is that he composed music, and he might have composed Greensleeves. I'm like, come on, you did it. If it's like that, you might. It's like, I can't remember whether I did Daft Punk to Get Lucky or not. It's like Greensleeves is the biggest song. Before you can record songs, that's the biggest song ever, and you'd be like, oh, I might have composed the biggest banger of all time. It's not.
That's like when my mum tried to tell me that she invented the phrase "get a room."
What?
Yeah, a couple of years ago, she went, yeah, you know the phrase. We were having this weirdly emotional, deep conversation, and then she just started talking about investing in cryptocurrency. I'm like, pardon? And then she made me cook a pizza on a barbecue because her oven was broken. And then in the same night, she said, yeah, I invented the phrase "get a room." I'm like, you're off your head, woman.
And that's like someone of that interesting conversation you've had there.
Yeah.
It's still my favourite is when Alexander Burt thought the phrase "elephant in the room" didn't exist in the UK.
We selling? Huh? Okay. The buyer wants it airdropped. The product's loaded and waiting at the helipad.
Not realising that everyone's used it since they were about 11. You are correct, Alex. There were 33 compositions attributed to Henry VIII, although the evidence is he did not compose Greensleeves. So I think he was doing the opposite. Not saying I didn't do Harris track, but I didn't make it. I didn't make the other national. A true lie. And stay in your seat, ladies. What do you think of this? Quick. He played the lute, the organ, and the instrument that can reduce any lady to her knees, the recorder.
Oh. Hey, Henry, you played 3 blind mice.
I'll give you a moment to recover from that.
Gushing.
The bridge is burning down, and so are my pants.
So, what do you think of this, Felicity? Is this uncomfortable? Wouldn't it be nice if we got to the end and he was just a person who couldn't really read and write, didn't understand, just did whatever Cromwell said, got knocked about by Wolsey and all these evil advisors, when in fact behind it is a man with a plan. You might well not like his plan, but there was a thought through, philosophical, knitted together, proper plan to try and make England great again, and it worked. We became to the centre of the world, a world power with our most remembered monarch of all time, based on the talents of the man.
You're describing Rupert Murdoch. That doesn't make me like him.
One of yours?
He's very, very smart, Rupert Murdoch. Do I wish that he doesn't? I mean, I can't say that on. I can't.
Sorry, can I just check? Is Jerry Hall and Bonnie?
Yes. No, she's Catholic.
She would definitely like to be doing less heads.
Yucky. Yeah.
I mean, I would high-five myself if it wasn't unattractive for that one.
Why would you put that in our head? Why would you want to know a sexual partner of Rupert Murdoch?
Exactly. Well,
It was actually very beautiful when Jerry Hall and Rupert Murdoch first met. Rupert Murdoch actually dressed up as a servant and revealed himself only later in their courtship. And it's lucky that Jerry Hall fell for him for his wonderful personality.
So we know that he was a proper king. He was strong, confident. We know he loved to joust and do battle. We make fun of that, but that wasn't the standard. Not everyone actually put the armour on, picked up a sword, and went and had it outside of Wetherspoons. He did. He did exploit factions. He did create division, but it was to produce unity, to bring the country together. Yes, he went Memphis to watch the sun, but he had to, or there would have been no England, arguably. When it came to parenting, weird behaviour, hands-on, doting, carrying the babies round, playing with them, curious behaviour. And one last mitigating factor, which isn't a mitigating factor, although it would be in 2021 really tough. After he had a really bad horse riding accident, the one he never really recovered from, his behaviour massively changed. There is a reasonable consensus that there was some sort of brain injury there, because the behaviour between young Henry and old Henry was night and day. The paranoia, the mood swings, the almost hallucination, not able to trust anyone, the violent outbursts, beating of his advisors. This is night and day before the injury and after. He was 57 inches up top at his chest, 54 inches at the waist, leg ulcer, and died a painful death. And it's an egotistical. Stop going too much into history. You could argue his policies were not conceived in the national interest, but in his interest. But you could easily argue the other way, and indeed I've tried to, which moves us, I'm afraid, to the vote. I'm going to come, so I'll try, come on, it's like I mean, I think I only remember I was there when I did Sid Vicious, this has been harder. And I won that one. So Alex, we'll come to you first. Alex Keeley, do you believe Henry VIII evil or genius? It's time to vote.
I'll pop a genius in there. I mean, it's a brain melter to be raised for most of your life and be told you're the centre of the universe. It's just going to melt your brain, isn't it? So if you come out of the day only mildly, if you only killed 2 wives out of 6, that's you're coming from just absolute egomania at the beginning. So he helps set up some of the state. Why not? Yeah, sure. Genius.
Alex has correctly recognised the virtues of this king and voted genius. Now, will we move it into a possible unanimous vote? Because I can never predict what Granny Maguire's going to say, I'm going to come to her second. I feel like she might still be lingering on McDonald's or something like that.
So personally, I think of Henry VIII as like the original Ginger Spice. And much like Jerry Halliwell, am I scared of his terrific power? Yes, I am. Do I think they're both capable of terrible things? Sure. But I respect their genius. So, I'm going to say he is a genius.
This is unbelievable. So we already know Henry VIII is going to go into genius box. We know that. But will he join the small group of evil genius subjects that get a unanimous vote? And it is subject to Queen Elizabeth II, Felicity Ward, who will decide.
I am disgusted and appalled at my fellow ex-comedians. I am, with Alex, I was going to say, oh, typical man, just flippantly saying that he's a genius, sure.
I think Alex was aroused by some of the female violence, have you? And listeners will never see that because he's excited by some of the
He did. He's actually got a lot of newspaper clippings on his wall that you can't see, and then pieces of string connecting them.
Pictures of women with the eyes cut out where they should be, and he probably looks through those or pokes his tongue through the holes, would be my guess.
Is that a 7 poster up on his wall?
Some people have baked in lockdown. I've chosen other hobbies.
I've
that's
baked
maths.
people.
Alex chose maths. So come on, Felicity Ward. It's time to vote. Henry VIII.
He's evil. I'm not doing this for you and your little game.
So Henry is not unanimous. It's 2-1 genius, but that does not make any difference. The rules of evil genius are clear. We just need a majority. So Henry VIII is a genius. Right, but he did write Daft Punk. So thank you very much to all our guests, Grania Maguire, the awesome comedian and candle maker, the wonderful Felicity Ward, and the fantastic prime number loving Alex Keeling. Thank you very much. We have declared Henry VIII a genius. Do go back to all the old episodes if you want to know about Elvis. We have decided. If you want to know why Gandhi was a racist, if you want to know why Muhammad Ali was a racist, if you want to know why women's rights campaigners across the land were racist, basically everyone was racist.
Everyone was racist.
But some of them are also pedos as well, so catch up on the previous episode. It's really exciting. I've been the one that looks like Nick Grimshaw. Thank you very much. See you again soon. Bye.
A new podcast series from BBC Radio 4. In the first stage of Poltergeist haunting, the entity will confine itself to making noise as it's testing its victims. The Battersea Poltergeist.
My name's Shirley Hitchens. I'm 15 years old. I live with my mum, dad, brother, gran.
On BBC Sound.
This is the BBC.
This podcast is supported by advertising outside the UK.
In 2012, a new charity burst onto the scene. It's called Believe in Magic, and it grants wishes to seriously ill children. It has the support of the biggest boy band in the world, One Direction. It's run by an inspirational 16-year-old girl called Megan Barry, who herself is battling a brain tumor.
I've been in and out of hospital and seen so many other very poorly children.
But when questions arise about her story, they reveal she could be facing another very different danger. What is this girl going through?
Okay.
Listen to Believe in Magic with me, Jamie Bartlett.
BBC Sound, music, radio, podcast.
Warning, this episode contains strong language. Welcome to BBC Radio 4's Evil Genius. I'm Russell Payne, and in 2020 I just didn't feel enough of the things we held dear were ruined. That's why I'm here to do it with the people you fawn over, your heroes, your famous darlings from the past. Who can forget when a bunch of cosy fangirling comedians were forced to face Richard Pryor's junky violence? The only moment I savoured more was watching the students' brains of my guests melt when I showed them how vile Bill Hicks was as a human. Not a nice fella at all. Gutman's Union. Or what about Nina Simone? Yes, a great singer. One mean mother. No, she really was a mean mother. From Pablo Escobar to John Lennon, dive into past episodes if you want to learn stuff, laugh, and have a really bad day editing your music playlists. The mind game I play is simple. I detonate 3 fact explosions underneath the legend, and at the end of the show my poor panel will vote one way or the other. Evil or genius. And today, Alfred Hitchcock. Ooh, the suspense. Will a man who found pecking birds, serial killers, and wearing a skin mask of your dead mum drolly amusing? Ooh, will they turn out to be a bit weird? The suspense is literally get the picture. And the guest helping me decide whether we stay hitched to this legend or label him a cock. I know, good enough. Heidi Regan, comedian, with a podcast called A Thin Layer of Film. Thank God you're here, Heidi. Oh, he's blagging, hosting all the knowing stuff. Catherine Bohart, comedian with an online gig every Thursday called Gig List, and I was just begging her for some Zoom stage time before this started. It was quite pathetic. And Tom Parry, 1/3 of Patton's. Please, please, please check out their podcast, Patton's Flatshare Slamdown. It's fantastic. So, before we get going, if you were to direct a film, what kind of film would it be? Porn. Catherine said porn before even being asked. That's how front of her mind it was. Tom, what would you, if you could direct one type of film, what would you do? Horror, thriller?
I mean, for me, this has become even more so the last 4 months. I've always been a fan of Wes Anderson's films, how he makes everything look so beautiful, so ordered, so tidy. I've just had a child, so I'm 4 months into being a parent. I have never craved that kind of order so much in all of my life. Like, my entire life is just a bomb site, and I would love it to look like a Wes Anderson film right now.
And the coolest lie you'll be told is, this is the hardest stage of getting easier. Like some sort of weird chapter from Dante's Inferno, but there's another circle of hell beyond, which is worse. Can you do with that 40 it really does edge off? This is Archery 85 Catherine, we know you direct a porn film, so talk us about would it be some sort of radical feminist porn, or would it be straightforward? I'm here to fix the boiler.
First of all, congratulations, Tom, on your new porn. That's a little bit false, honestly. Secondly, it would be porn. I don't know why you would assume it was radical feminist, or indeed plumbers, or that means expensive, because women can be plumbers. Thank you, Russell, honestly. Here's what I say.
And it was a female plumber walking into the door. In fact, you assumed it was a male. It speaks to the patriarchy that shapes her every thought.
It is true. Thank you for explaining that. Here's what I say. I don't watch porn. I've never seen porn. I don't watch it. Obviously, I exist in the world, so, like, I know that it's...
Are you sure?
Yes, seriously. So, like, I've seen Capcom glimpses, and I, like, understand that it informs everything that I'm advertised, but I've never actually watched it. And so I think and I think that's because I'm very self-centered and very specific and very imaginative, and therefore I think that if I were to direct my own, then I'd happily watch it over and over, but I can't be doing with anything that I don't want in there. Does that make sense? In the same way that, like, but, like, before I have sex, I have to have my room incredibly tidy. Like,
no, Tom will love that.
Yeah,
Tom will love that.
We should talk.
Tom's getting aroused by your tidying.
Yes, no, but imagine that's where the problem started. No. But I just feel like, because I can't have anything in my eyeliner that's like, that would just distract me. So similarly, I think if I make my own porn, I'd be willing to watch it.
Well, I'm assuming you'd be the star of it as well. How self-centered are you?
No,
a film with you and you can watch it.
No, my God, I have a little bit of aspiration in my filmmaking. No, it would be like a much hotter version of somebody who loves the opposite of me. So no.
Well, the pressure's on here, Heidi. What type of film would you make?
Well, I think kind of a bit like Catherine was saying, and also in the spirit of this podcast, I reckon I'd do one of those, like, just use it to do a revisionist retelling of my whole life, where I just go over every mistake I made, but justify it. It's like this really long epic that everyone, like, so self-indulgent.
And each gig.
Yeah. And then that's my character looking at the camera going, see, it was right that I did that. And everyone's like, yeah, we get it, Heidi, okay, you need to move on.
That'd be the ultimate arrogant revisionist history where everything stays the same. That's the same film. It appears every decision I agree with.
Nailed it.
Hey, that's my title!
Okay, fine. Let me tell you a little bit about Alfred Hitchcock if you didn't know. He was born in 1899 in Leytonstone, England. He had a greengrocer father who died when he was 15. He went to a Jesuit school, but his work to support the family became the breadwinner. He spent a great deal of time at the cinema, and in 1920 he was hired as an illustrator when an American film company opened in London. He worked his way up, and by 1925 was directing his first film, receiving rave reviews almost immediately. In 1926, he married screen editor Alma Reville, and they had one child. I will tell you now, Tom Parry, that is the magic number.
Right.
One.
Yeah, okay.
One and done, the globe's full, and your life will be ruined. In 1934, he filmed The Man Who Knew Too Much, the first of 6 consecutive thrillers. In the late 1930s, he moved to the United States, almost immediately winning the 1940 Best Picture Oscar for Rebecca, adapted from Du Maurier, of course. For the next 3 decades, he enjoyed huge success with films including Rear Window, North by Northwest, and Psycho, working with Hollywood legends such as Ingrid Bergman, James Stewart, and Grace Kelly. By the time he died in 1980, he was not only a household name, but also a director much respected as a master of suspense. Hitchcock. Short, brief answers here before we crack on, but is anyone a genuine fan?
I am.
Heidi, you watch the films, you think they're genuinely great, they're timeless classics?
I do, but my Hitchcock genuinely is the reason I have a film podcast and got obsessed with film metaphors. Not specifically because of his films, but his films got me obsessed with people overanalyzing film. Like, I had to spend 3 months at uni analysing the film Psycho, and I was just in love with, I was looking through all this analysis and found a guy had written a whole book, like a very short book, but a whole book about how he thought that Psycho was all about poo, and I just remember reading it.
It was certainly shit when I watched it.
But he was like, this is what Hitchcock was trying to get across, and I just remember reading his evidence was, one of it was, and we see the number plate of the car, the middle letter is an O, which is, of course, a rectum. And I was
I think we all know what that gentleman's hard drive will look like.
Yeah.
Catherine, I'm always careful here because I often have to make programs about people where the art doesn't speak to me, and I just, for whatever reason, have rewatched. I have, of course, seen Hitchcock films, but I've rewatched them, and they're even more boring and old and black and white and out of date than they used to be. And I wonder if there's a problem in that. Romance, if you watch Brief Encounter, or indeed if you watch Sound of Music, the emotions are still the same, really. You love your family, you love each other, and romance doesn't age. The things we're scared of date pretty quickly, as far as film is concerned.
It is tricky now that we have home alarm systems to buy much of his.
I thought you were saying Home Alone.
No, Home Alone. I get a Hitchcock, but like they're probably fine. But listen, I agree. I find it like very boring. But I would say that I also went to drama school, and similar to Heidi, he was emblematic of and synonymous with genius and film history in a way that you could there was no. You could say it's not for me, but there was no contending that he didn't change the form and do things that hadn't been done before in a way they hadn't been done before, and give people an experience they'd never actually give people feelings they hadn't had in a cinema before. And that I can't pretend that I don't see those things easily.
Can I just say that was such an eloquent answer, whereas mine was just, I like them because this guy sort of...
I preferred your answer. Talking of poo, that's how I had to explain this to Lindsay. I was trying to get to watch Hitchcock, Tom. I had to say, but he was the first to do these things. So if I was to bring Sir John Harrington's first flushable water closet and put it in front of you, you would not be impressed with how it flushed away your poo.
Yeah.
However, there's no denying it. Sir John Harrington and Thomas Crapper made the first toilet, legends. Hitchcock made the first horrors. They might not flush anymore, but they were the first.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you wouldn't say to someone, well, let's sit down and read the complete works of Shakespeare. It's going to be a banging Saturday night, but you have to respect it and know that it's the first person to do brilliant things. And like the idea of Hitchcock, and like you said, it's not an emotional thing. It's a technical thing. What he did with technique, and with we all know about like the zoom thing that goes on. In
Don't talk about Zoom,
vertigo.
for Christ's sake. Let's change this meeting.
He invented Zoom.
I knew he'd done something amazing.
Also, wasn't he the first person to show a toilet on screen?
He was Psycho. It was the first ever flushing toilet when she got rid of the evidence about her.
Of course you know that, Heidi. You sat next to that guy.
I think we're seeing a theme with Heidi.
No, it was this man. You can't find the book, but I swear someone wrote it.
Okay, so how Evil Genius works is we start from one of two places, either someone that it's fashionable to dislike or someone that it's who we like, who thought great or fashionable to like. Today, undoubt about it, Hitchcock, the film genius, full stop, end the show, except no. We open 3 envelopes which surprise, delight, horrify, killer in the shower, and these envelopes will direct the debate and hopefully confuse you and confound you. So who has envelope number 1?
Here we go. Okay,
Oh, look at that little letter there.
there we go. Okay. So, he revolutionised filmmaking, unquestionably the greatest filmmaker to emerge from these islands. Hitchcock did more than any director to shape modern cinema, which would be utterly different without him. His flair was for narrative, cruelly withholding crucial information from his characters and from us, and engaging the emotions of the audience like no one else. Not my words, the words of the Daily Telegraph.
Or the Truth Chronicle. Shortly before I looking on my savings. No, the genius here is obvious and undeniable. He changed the way we look at films and how films are made. His influence extended over cinematography, soundtracks, editing, and mise-en-scène, and is still present today. I mean, that's the point, isn't it, Heidi? When we've just had kicked the films about it, they're easy to make fun of. But he's made structural change in storytelling. So if you switch on the latest Eli Roth horror, it's the same thing remixed, the same tools.
Yeah. Well, that wasn't, he was the first one to try and do the whole film in one shot with rope or whatever, and everyone's...
Rope was 10 shots. Rope was, he didn't leave the room, and it was 10 shots, which he blended by leaning into the jacket.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. Now that is a great one for the story. That and Rear Window, really.
Yeah, Rear Window is, the most entertaining, I think. It's the one that keeps the... And great acting in that one as well.
What does that say? Because they're both very stationary films. We don't, in fact, on both of those, we don't leave the set, as it were, once. We stay in Jimmy Stewart's bedroom.
Yeah.
I mean, we look out of his bedroom, we never leave it.
I guess it's... Oh, sorry.
And in Rope, we sort of definitely stay in one room. Was he more comfortable with that setup? Do those ones age better?
I wonder if it's like Catherine was saying in terms of what scares us is different now, whereas we're all still scared of looking out the window and picking on our neighbours and living near a creek and stuff, and we're scared of ropes. So
I don't think that was the take-up from that movie. It's ropophobia. I think the bit where they strangled their friend to death, spoiler alert. It's not a spoiler alert. I mean, Rope is so shocking. As the final credit rolls, you hear a scream, and it dissolves onto a man being choked to death with a rope. That is the opening shot.
Yeah. There's one that I haven't been able to watch because it's a really grim scene. I don't even know if I said it, but like a sexual assault thing, I think.
We're going to talk about Marnie later on, if that's what you're referring to.
I think I was talking about Frenzy.
Oh my God, there's a choice.
Yeah.
Which of these horrific sexual assault scenes did you not rewatch? What else?
Right? I'll just bring up all the horrific stuff I can't watch.
So, as, like me, a Hitchcock layman, Catherine, do you identify with this genius? Do you say yes, accepted, or do you take issue? Do you think, well, actually, I'm not sure that's genius. It was just right place, right time.
It's so tricky, right? Because what I know about Hitchcock is slightly colouring what I think about his genius. I'm like, yeah, it's obviously important, and we need film nerds to change the way in which we use cameras to make films about whether or not men are scared in their houses or women are like spooked out and squeal. But equally, like, why do those film nerds always have to get so excited by their awards that they take advantage of women? Like, I just, again, so I know that that's colouring my judgment of it. Yeah, he's real good at making films. Does that matter?
Well, that's what we're here to decide. I think Heidi would say that. Tom, if I just read this to you, and then I don't know about you, but if I can get on with knocking out a silly video online with no editing, no pre-production, no storyboard, if when I'm lucky enough to have a show on the BBC copywriting or something like that, I will put in the minimum storyboarding, fastidious diligence possible. If I could just rock up and look into camera 3 and it's funny enough, I shall cut. He was the opposite of me. Fastidious. He got a lot of thought into his pre-production and storyboarding. He barely even had to look through a viewfinder when filming, apparently. Are you diligent like that, Tom? Or are you, it's funny enough, let's roll with it.
I'm much more from the rough and ready side of it. But that is what I admire about Hitchcock. I must admit, like, when it comes to, if you take the emotional side out of things, you can't help but admire from this kind of filming point of view. He was clearly a genius, and one of the things he really did was cultivate the myth of a director, because I knew of Alfred Hitchcock before I knew his films. He put himself in his films. You know, he created series where he was as much a character as part of the film, this kind of self-mythology. And he wasn't trying to tell us he was a good man. He wasn't going, look, I'm a great bloke, I'm really nice to people. All of his films are sinister, they've got this, you know, he knows how to manipulate audiences and story, and like, he kind of portrays himself as this slightly sinister puppet master, displaying a certain self-awareness. That's one of the things that I find fascinating about Hitchcock, is how much he was able to create the character of Hitchcock himself.
And I think if he wasn't holding himself up as a great person, we can say he was a genius at marketing. I mean, with Psycho, you don't know the story of Psycho.
Hey, which one of my skills is required? No problem. I'll get him off your back.
It's not going to work. A budget, slasher horror, give up. So he said to the picture, he said to the company, just distribute it. I'll make it. He made it. They still didn't like it. They were only going to put it on in 2 cinemas just to see what happens. So he sent security guards, health warnings, loads of regulations to follow for the queues, cardboard cutouts of himself for the foyer saying, please don't go in if you've got a medical condition. But that's where he used his own image to leverage the product, as it were. So definitely a marketing. I mean, that's the type of stuff we associate with sort of 90s and noughties marketing companies, guerrilla marketing. And he was doing it back then, in the 50s and 60s.
Also, that's a bit like a nerd at school going like, you don't want to go out with me, I'm too bad for you.
I'm too dangerous, man.
Yeah.
I shit, you scaring me, yeah.
But it worked.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I can tell that Catherine certainly is primed and ready to discuss envelope 2, but who's holding it?
Oh, that will be me. So here we go. Sadistic prankster. Alfred Hitchcock's pranks varied from ostensibly harmless japes through dark mind games and onto sadistic humiliation.
So, I mean, look, we're jesters ourselves, and we'll probably all do. I do find practical jokes funny. I know it's immature and I should raise the bar, but I do find the most ridiculous juvenile jokes funny. And some of his jokes were very funny. One guy was boasting about his new electric kitchen all day on set. So Alfred Hitchcock sent 2 tons of coal to his front garden. At the wrap of one film, he got a researcher to actually look at everybody's house he was sending a gift to, and purposely sent gifts that were too big for each of those houses or didn't fit.
No, I mean, the next level.
Very funny. He took a cast to a restaurant when they were new on the crew in awe of him, and he would serve the meal in reverse order to see if anyone dare question it. Dessert first, start. He dyed everything on a menu blue, served them blue spaghetti, blue pudding, and to see if everyone was. So these are great.
These are good. This is good stuff.
Listen, borrow and use. But I'm afraid they got nasty quick.
And it's interesting that even the ones that you're like describing as great are based on either, like, you could be like, it's so funny that they were too big for their houses, or you could be like, oh, what inherent classism, or the fact that he's like, oh, I know that I have so much power over you, such as the power disparity and inequality. Let's see what I can fucking make you do. It's even the lighthearted stuff is like, fucking question me.
But particularly with the man in his kitchen, he was obviously, as a guy, we know he was very insecure about the way he looked, about his body shape, about his confidence around women. So the cool guy with his brand new electric kitchen, boom, take some coal, biatch.
Yeah.
You can use that one, guys. Blue spaghetti, lighten up.
Okay, what about this one? An actress revealed her fear of fire to Hitchcock. So he got a technician to pump smoke into a telephone box That in itself is already, what are you doing? But he bolted the door shut from the outside. So this woman genuinely had a moment of screaming where, if you've got a fear of fire, one would assume she thought she was going to die. This is where the banter stops, guys. That's not like, you thought you were going to die. Your face. Oh, Tom, you were wise as shit. Tom, you actually thought you were going to die, didn't you? Yeah. I mean, come on.
But
That is wrong.
I'm terrified of horror films, and because when I saw the film Scream when I was quite young, I was then completely terrified. And I had a friend whose little brother was obsessed with horror and Hitchcock and that. For 2 years, whenever I went to their house, as soon as I went to the toilet, he would turn off all the lights and jump out at me with the Scream mask on every single time. And I knew it was coming, and I was still just utterly shit scared.
After the toilet?
It wasn't fun. After, so but then I had to go back, yeah.
Before, an age ago. That really got me moving. Thank you, better than fibre. So who told Hitchcock your innermost fear? I hate dead birds, weirdly. I don't mind live birds, though, because when I saw my mum freaked out by a dead bird a cat brought in when I was younger, I just can't be near them. I wouldn't tell sicko Hitchcock about my dead bird phobia.
Do you eat meat?
I wonder what's gonna be in. No, plucked. Fine. Plucked and roasted. Fine. But when I see the chickens hanging in the butcher with the necks, and Tom, are you scared of anything?
Well, I'd flip it. I'd be around Hitchcock and I'd be like, do you know what I hate? Oh, God, a lasagna. Oh, I'd love a lasagna with some garlic bread on the side. Oh, I'd freak right out. He'd serve it up. I wouldn't care what colour it is. I'd eat it.
It was the 30s. He'd probably be like, what?
Yeah, no, I'd freak you out.
There's lots I could have picked here, by the way. These aren't like the 5 pranks he played. There are others which I'll just postage stamp where he tried to split up a couple on purpose by sending gifts to the wife to see what the husband's reaction would be. Weird stuff like that. But this, for me, hands down, is the worst one. He dared a crew member. He said, I bet you can't spend a night in the studio in the dark without freaking out if I handcuff you to a camera, and I'll bet you so many dollars. The crew member's like, easy peasy. So they chained him to the camera, and Hitchcock went, here's a slug of brandy to knock you out. I'll see you in the morning and I'll pay you in cash. What the crew member didn't know was he'd laced the brandy with a very strong laxative, and when they came in the next morning, the guy was obviously angry, distressed, and covered in shit in front of all his colleagues and co-workers. I mean, that is not. This goes beyond. Oh, he didn't like women, or the guys. That is the actions of an absolute serial killing madman. Is it not? So, Catherine, what do you think of that? He ran the whole gamut from whoopee cushions, which he genuinely did, horse in the dressing room, another one of his live adult horse, to chaining someone and making them shit them. I mean, that
do
is
actually
basic
think that
humiliation.
thing's real funny, apart from the animal cruelty. There's something so grotesque about that, because it's like, even at a base level, if say he was gonna just pay him and he hadn't non-consensually drugged, like given him a laxative, it's like, okay, well, even that's about power, right? Like, it's about like, I have something you want, it's money, you will do what I want for it, even though like, which is grotesque. But then not caring about whether or not somebody wants to ingest a laxative, sure, genuinely grotesque. But the thrill he clearly had going home knowing that the next morning that man would be shamed in front of people.
He was probably laughing into his non-laced brandy back.
Yeah, like it's just that, to have 12 hours presumably, or 8 hours, whatever it was, knowing that was happening, knowing someone was in physical distress, and that they must have been terrified knowing that their co-workers were going to come in and enjoying that. That's sadistic.
That is really... I mean, listen, we can I'd love to make a horror film, or I'd love to write a horror novel, and you sort of think it doesn't mean someone's... Look at Val McDermid, she's a crime novelist. People get butchered left, right and centre, burnt with quicklime. I don't think that Val McDermid is a serial killer.
Yeah, I want to make a porn, but it doesn't mean I'm getting laid.
No, exactly. But... on this occasion, I'm starting to think, is the source material trying to tell us something? Do you think this is Hitchcock showing us who he was sometimes in his films, and not just a man good at making weird films? We're not just watching the birds, we're watching a man who likes the idea of a woman scared of birds pecked by birds, who genuinely gets...
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is a man who knows how to create a story. And I don't want to defend those actions, but I also, there's part of it that goes...
Wait a minute, what is the story behind man gets chained to camera and shit?
If I'm working on that film, I'm retelling that story again and again and again. And I don't want to implement myself here, but we were at university, me and my 4 friends, and our landlord did an unconscionable rent rise on us. and we were going to have to move out. So we invited him round for a cup of tea to discuss it and attempted to spike his drinks with laxatives because we thought it was a way of sticking it to the man. Now, I realise as I'm saying this that I'm implementing myself terribly. I'm not excusing Hitchcock's reactions because I'm very aware.
You weren't the one that put the drug in. And it
Well, of course, that's right, exactly. And it was a different time.
Catherine's face, I wish it was it.
But
even in your scenario, I could be like, it was people without power taking revenge against somebody who had...
And the guy could get to a toilet. It is different if the guy could
And
get
also,
to a
he's
toilet.
in the position of power. It's still obviously immature and grotesque, but, like, I understand the power dynamic was distinct there. And also,
Distinctive.
Don't laugh, you mustn't encourage him, Heidi. But I do think that it's an interesting question of whether or not he was trying to tell us about himself, because I think that there's an arrogance in both, right? Like, there's an arrogance in doing it knowing you'll get away with it, and there's an arrogance if he is evil in putting signals in films that indicate that sinister nature, and knowing no one will question you on it because it's a really good film.
The thing is, when I rewatched Rope, I think I saw it when I was a kid, and I rewatched Rope after doing all the research on his practical jokes. And if you don't know the plot of it, as I say, no spoiler here, the guy's killed in the opening scene, and two mates have killed someone for a thrill to see what it would feel like. And they put the body in a trunk and invite the guy's family over and serve lunch on the trunk to the family for a thrill to see if they can get away with it. And you sort of think, he would like to do that. He would love to strangle someone and serve dinner on their corpse. Genuine.
Crucially, he didn't do that, right? And like we have to say,
as far as we know.
But also, we as humans like to watch that. So there is a part of the human condition that wants that. There's a reason that film's successful. It's because you want to see that. Hitchcock understood that. He knows how to scratch the itch of the dark side of human psyche, and he's doing it in pranks and stories and tricks. He's testing the waters of this kind, of things like manipulation and being a puppet master. But crucially, he's not out there killing people, but he is exploring that side of the human psyche. And by exploring it, we understand it more, which makes us better as humans.
An excellent parry by Parry there. I mean, without being too determinative, how did he get so fit? Was he born that way? Are there any experiences we can find that maybe explain the adult Alfred Hitchcock? A couple of things here. Aged 5 or 6, he woke up one night at home to find his parents had gone for a walk in Hyde Park. They were sure he would stay asleep. He woke up. It was a very traumatic experience. He spoke about it his whole life, this idea of being sick, being home alone, being abandoned. Mix that with stern disciplinarian father, who popped his clogs when he was 15. It's once said that he ordered Alfred to appear at the local police station. Alfred Hitchcock says he doesn't remember what he did, and his father sent him with a note to the police station, and in that note was instructions to lock him up, to teach him a lesson for a few minutes. So he was locked in a cell for a few minutes and given the fear. And then his dad died, and then he developed a very close relationship with his overprotective mother. So we've got abandonment, stern father, overprotective mother. I mean, I don't want to make a Bundy Venn diagram here, guys, but we're getting there. As for the paranoid about his looks, he recalls going home to his mother after being called funny looking, that's an earner in our profession, by a fellow student and asking, do you think I look funny? His mother offered the less than ideal consolation, you'll outgrow it. In melancholy retrospect, he muses, I didn't outgrow it, I just outgrew. No one wants to be fat. That's a universal. He was a self-proclaimed celibate, he said. He had sex once. I mean, take that with a pinch of salt, obviously. But I think we can... The fact that he was constantly recounting these... Had he read some Freud and was trying to lay some pseudo-groundwork to explain his weirdness? Or was he damaged by some of these experiences?
I mean, I think people whose jobs it is to create narrative love to tell their own and love to...
Don't we all know that?
I think that is partly it. It's like he tells stories about everything, so he has his own, and he's rewriting it and editing and finessing it. I think everyone does that, but I think we are so guilty of it.
Yeah. I remember this time I was... Sorry, Heidi.
I growing up was called funny looking as a child many times, but I never handcuffed anyone to anything to make them shit their pants. That's all my thoughts are on this. I found ways to be funny about it, so I win. Heidi won.
We will have to move on to, I'm sure, the envelope we sadly all knew was coming. So whoever has envelope number 3, I think using my Poirot-like skills of deduction, I know who it might be.
I think it might be me.
The Bowmeister General, what have you got?
Alright, here we go. Misogyny, obsession, possessiveness, and Tippi Hedren. He stared at me and simply said, as if it was the most natural thing in the world, that from this time on, he expected me to make myself sexually available and accessible to him, however and whenever and wherever he wanted. Tippi Hedren, spellbound by beauty, Donald Spotto.
So Hitchcock first became aware of actress Tippi Hedren after seeing her in an advert. She agreed to sign a 7-year contract with him in 1961. He became her drama coach, but extended his influence over in other ways, such as choosing her clothes and then eventually telling her where she could and couldn't go. She wanted to go to some fundraising gala for the weekend, and he told her no. This is Rod Taylor, who is Hedren's co-star in The Birds. No one was permitted to come physically close to her during the production. Don't touch the girl after I call cut, he said to me repeatedly. Now, this really is moving into disturbing, and I should say as well, Tippi has fleshed out this story to say that, you know, it did go significantly further than that. We might talk about that in a minute. It's definitely in the realms of assault and attempted assault. So, there is a bit of his word against her, and there are plenty of people still alive who worked on that film to say that Tippi has told one story her whole life and it's suddenly changed. Now, that could just be someone who was experiencing trauma and felt they suddenly could talk about it, or we have to consider the opposite might be true. Nonetheless, this is disturbing as fuck, is it not, Tom Parry?
Yeah, well, this is where we land squarely in the disturbing realm, and I'm not going to start defending it. I think you have to believe Tippi and what she's saying, and also it doesn't come as any surprise. And I think that's the one thing, like Hitchcock is saying he's this kind of a guy, and so it's not like, oh wow, what? But he was such a great bloke. It's like the fact that the person who's demonstrated all of these characteristics and sets himself up as that kind of person starts acting like this doesn't really come as a surprise. I mean, it's unconscionable and it's clearly an abuse of power. And I don't really know what else to say there, really, apart from, again, it's taking what seems to be stuff that he's doing in, I think doing it in his stories, that kind of manipulating audiences, manipulating people with his stories, doing it as pranks, okay, doing it to women who you're in a position of power over, unacceptable.
And he tried to kiss her in the back of a car, Heidi, and when she rebuffed him, his actions grew worse. She subsequently made that a bit more explicit in that it was an attempted sexual assault, basically. This is where we come back to what I said earlier. The signalling in the film, they're not just metaphors and great stories anymore. Yeah. Is this a Savile-esque signalling from
testing the waters?
Thing? Was he getting off on his source material, not just the artistic thrill of making a scream in that roller coaster way, but getting off on the idea of butchering women at a motel in a non-ironic way? Is that what was at this man's core?
Well, I mean, I don't know, weirdly, but if I was
what? Heidi, I want Heidi out the studio immediately.
But yeah, there's the whole, like we were saying about comedians tell stories to process things, and that if he's choosing all these ways of behaving or stories to tell, it could have been him clearly thinking, how can I process these gross things I want to do? And then he did them, so that's gross. It's about it. I think, like Tom, there's not much I can say other than what a gross thing.
Catherine, just before you comment, I just want to say it wasn't just the weird sexual stuff that was going on. A key scene in The Birds involved Hedren's character being attacked by birds. Now, Hitchcock had assured her all the way through that the birds would be mechanical. But on the day when she went to the set, there was a cage with 4 boxes of ravens, gulls, and a few pigeons thrown in for good measure. Bird trainers with gauntlets up to their shoulders hurled the birds, one after the other, at me for 1 week. As the days went by, it became worse and worse. He sent a doll to her daughter, Melanie Griffith, and the doll was of Tippi Hedren in a grave, and he'd even put tiny scars on the doll to represent the peck injuries that had occurred on the set. Come on, Catherine Barrow. I mean, we don't need to debate this.
No, I mean, it's sadistic in the most extreme and overt way, but for me, it's like, who cares if his films were embodiments of things he wanted to do otherwise? You can make Disney films, you can make cartoons, you can make, like, romances, you can make... There are men abusing power and women who sit as the front-facing figures of very wholesome endeavours.
So wait a minute, just to be clear, Catherine, so you're saying if someone harbours a very, very wrong desire that's true, that's definitely true about their personality, and they put that into their art, it doesn't throw more of a shade onto the art than someone who's a jolly nice person with a clear heart who gets a thrill out of scaring people. You think that's the end result is the same. So let's do the thought experiment. Neither person has abused or hurt anyone in the real world. One genuine sex offender who holds back because he's scared of prison and makes sex offending movies. The other wholesome, kind person with family, not a bad bones body, but loves scaring people. They make the same film. It's no moral difference between me sitting down to rub my hands and watch either.
I think, first of all, I think in terms of like if they're not impacting or harming anybody else.
But it has come from a place of lust for cruelty. It would freak me out. Like,
I think my point is that it was not actually this. My point wasn't that regardless of motive, the art is inherently morally of the same value. My point was more that I don't care if his films are sadistic or about rainbows. It doesn't, the sadistic and criminal act is what he did to that woman. So, like, I'm not, like, I guess I'm not busying myself wondering, like, oh, should we have known that he was dark? Oh, does it change the art?
I mean, Tom, my problem is, obviously I agree with what you're saying, Catherine. My problem, Tom, is when the gap between the art that's being created and the wrongness inherent in the person narrows, for me the art does become more problematic. It does make a difference whether it's a rainbow or a rape scene, which we'll talk about in a moment, actually.
So I think it keeps coming back to that thing that Catherine was kind of getting to, saying was that, you know, if